Welcome to Kilroy's Outlaws and Legends Behind the Music with your host, multi-award-winning music producer, Eddie Kilroy. And now, here's your host, Eddie Kilroy.
Hey, welcome to Kilroy's Outlaws, Legends, and Behind the Music. And today we're going to talk about a wild child, a wild man, one with a reputation that was not rivaled by anyone that I knew in the music industry. I'm talking about Johnny Paycheck, who before that was Donnie Young. Before that, he was Donald Little, his given name, born up in Ohio. Wow, this guy, I don't know how he lived. I don't know how he maintained any type of career for as long as he did. He joined the Navy in 1956 and was shortly court-martialed and sent to the penitentiary where they send bad people. You know what he did? He fractured the skull of a naval officer. That will get you in trouble every time. And he went to the penitentiary, but he did not serve the full 18 years. They let him out, and he was released in 1959. He only served a couple of years, and they appealed it, and under appeal, they reversed it, and he got out after 2 years. Can you believe somebody would fracture the skull of a superior officer and only serve 2 years? That was, at that time, that was Donnie Little, and I guess after that he said, well, I'll be Donnie Young. And he started recording for a small label up there in Ohio, around Cincinnati, playing clubs and what have you. He had learned to play guitar, like most people at an early age. And he was the label that he was recording for was distributed by a local distributor there in Cincinnati, Ohio, whereas the promotion man that I ended up hiring when I was running Playboy Records, a guy by the name of Nick Hunter, he was the local promotion man for the distributor in Cincinnati, and that's where he met Donnie Young, who became Johnny Paycheck, and they became good friends. But Paycheck was in and out of trouble all the time, but between that 57 and 1981, he managed to get some things done. He was writing songs, playing music, and what have you, and had drifted into Nashville. And he wrote, somewhere around, I can't remember. Check me on this. It was 65, 66, 67. I'm not quite sure on that. I should have checked it, but I don't like to go online and check things. I'm supposed to know them up here. But it was apartment number 9. And it was recorded by Tammy Wynette, her very first record on Columbia Records. Actually, I think it was on Epic at the time, which was a subsidiary of Columbia. And Billy Sherrill was running the label, and Billy signed Tammy and wrote the song. And I bring up Billy's name because Billy eventually signed Johnny Paycheck to Columbia Records and had some big records on it. But while he was having these big records, he was having a lot of trouble. You know, he started his biggest following, his fan base, was the Hells Angels, the motorcycle gang, notorious for killing people, for beating people up, and for prostitution, and for, what else have I read about the Angels, the Hells Angels? Drugs. Drugs was a big source of income for them, which gave Paycheck an open door to get into drugs. They would provide him drugs, of course, because they were big fans of Johnny Paycheck. So he did things like going out with George Jones, singing harmony, playing bass. He went out with Farron Young, doing the same thing. Believe it or not, and I can't believe this, and I was talking to Liz about it because, you know, one of our dearest friends was Ray Price. And what a gentleman Ray Price was up till the day he died. But with Paycheck's troubles, I just can't see Ray hiring him to go out with him. But the guy was very talented. I've got to tell you, Johnny Paycheck had a lot of talent. He just didn't have a lot of scruples, and he didn't have a lot of morals. and he would do just about anything illegal. But anyway, he went out with him. I'll back up a little bit and say that I mentioned Nick Hunter, and Nick went to work for me at Playboy Records as a national promotion manager, and he did a good job. Well, he was friends with Paycheck back when Paycheck was Donnie Young in Cincinnati, and he would come up to the Playboy offices to say hello to Nick occasionally, and he would come into my office, and I'd shake hands with him, make him welcome, but, we weren't friends, but I often wondered, I don't want to turn my back on this guy. He's the guy that fractured the skull of a naval officer. He's the guy that did a lot of bad things. Like, for instance, he, what year was that? I'm trying to think of the year. It was in the middle 80s, and he shot a guy. Yeah, he's 7 years, sentenced to 7 years in prison for shooting this guy, and he only had to serve 22 months. And at the end of 22 months, he got a pardon. Yes, he did. He got a pardon from the governor of Ohio. Now tell me, a guy with a criminal record a mile long shoots a guy, sentenced to 7 years in prison, serves 22 months, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it was 2 years, but something like that. And the governor said, oh, he's a good guy, I'll just write him a pardon and let him go. I wonder how that came about. I often wonder about how political things come about and the pardons come about. 1997, believe it or not, he was inducted into the Grand Ole Opry and became a member of the Opry. And he wore that goofy hat. I don't know who creased his hat for him. He always wore a hat with a brim that looked like it was 7 or 8 inches. He should have gone to Shardy's down at the stockyard in Oklahoma City and had that hat fixed properly, or maybe down to Best Hats there on North Main in Fort Worth, had that hat fixed or something. But he liked a great big old hat. I'm telling you, he was charged with raping a 12-year-old girl, and that was never really went to court, but he was arraigned for that. And I think he served some time for that also, but he got off because all of his band testified he didn't do it. No, he didn't rape that girl, and he served a year. And he came back to court, and the band said, oh, no, Johnny didn't rape that girl. Well, what are they going to say? They're going to say he raped the girl, he goes to the penitentiary for life or whatever, and they don't have a job anymore. But I guess the court's up there. I guess if I get in trouble, I should be in Ohio and know the right people and get out of trouble. I don't want to be in any trouble, but Paycheck ruined his health. I mean, he did every drug. He was a really bad alcoholic, and I suspect that his source of drugs, unlimited source, were from the Hells Angels, and he died from abuse of his body. Actually, it was asthma and the other severe breathing problem that one has, and he died there in Vanderbilt Hospital in Nashville. He was dead broke. He had a lien of $300,000 from the government. They were after him from the IRS. He filed bankruptcy to get out of that. He was just all in between this. He was having these huge records like Take This Job and Shove It, which was written by another guy that I found to be very unscrupulous and somewhat out of center by the name of David Allan Coe. Now, he was a talented guy. He wrote some great songs, but he was not a very savory person. And then Paycheck had Slide Off of these satin sheets. That was a big, big record. And Take This Job and Shove It, which was number one on the Billboard charts for, 2 or 3 weeks. It was a big, big record, as you know. Take This Job and Shove It. Everybody knows that. He had some big records, and he had some old violin. That was a big one. Everybody covered it. Everybody recorded it. But he had the original record on old violin, and he did some live albums also. A funny story. I was producing. I mentioned this before. Louise Mandrell. She was married to a guy, a very, very, very nice guy. Okay, clean cut. I mean, it was almost like somebody took a brush and washed him and scrubbed him down. He was that clean. R.C. Bannon. And he had a couple of singles before he married Louise on Columbia Records, and they didn't do well at all. But Columbia sent him out with Johnny Paycheck. As you know from listening to me and other people also, that new artists go out with the artist that has some big records, so they can get in front of larger crowds than they would ordinarily. Like Gilly went out with Conway and Loretta, and so many people do that. Well, he went out with Paycheck, and he was telling me some stories, because you got to realize, I really can't tell the story too well because you don't know R.C. Bannon, but I'm trying to get a picture of R.C. in my mind to relay to you. Beyond being clean cut, he was a yuppie, and I don't want to offend any yuppies. That's okay. He was a city guy from Dallas. He'd never been in the country. He had never, I suspect he had never driven a pickup. He was I don't know how to describe him. I guess a city guy that had never been out with the rough crowd. He was telling me the story that he went out with Paycheck. And he had all his stage clothes on to look nice and really present himself well. And he had rented a motorhome. Paycheck was in a bus. And R.C. said I put on my fanciest clothes. And I go out there, and Paycheck is in a ragged T-shirt. And he's got this great big hat on. And then there's all these people. And he said, just looking at the people scared me to death. I'm talking about the Hells Angels. They were the audience for Johnny Paycheck. And they rode their motorcycles up, and they made all that noise and what have you. And they had chains on, and they had these black jackets on, and they had beards, and they had rings in their nose, and rings in their ears, and rings everywhere. And I'm saying all that to say it scared the hell out of R.C. Bannon. He said, I've got to go out and sing in front of these people. And he said, I went back to the motorhome. I took off my show clothes and put on a T-shirt. He said, I wanted to try to fit in. Then I did the show, and I go back. There's a spider right here in our show. Hello, Spider. Nice to see you. Well, he's just crawling around. What is that spider? That's Sam the Spider. Quite a guy. we have visitors here at the Cross K Ranch. Anyway, he said he went back after the show to kind of freshen up, and he opened his motorhome, which was a rented motorhome at that time. RC was just starting. And he said all the Hells Angels had it packed in there. He said, I didn't have a place to even sit down, and I didn't know what to say. And I had brought some wine from Dallas that was very, very good aged wine. And R.C. was a wine sipper, not a beer drinker. And he said, they drank my darn wine while I was out there singing. They weren't listening to me. And he said, I didn't know whether to tell them to get off my couch so I could sit down. So I just left, and I went over to Paycheck's bus. And they were all in Paycheck's bus. He said, Hell's Angels were everywhere. But Paycheck sold a lot of records. I tell you these stories about the bad things he did, and some he paid for, some he got out of, some he didn't. But you can't take away the talent that he had. And he passed away. When did he passed away? In 2004, I think he died. Or was it sooner? Later than that. Paycheck died at Vanderbilt Hospital of emphysema and asthma, all brought on by his way of life. And he died penniless. Can you believe a man had all those gold records, 6 gold albums? One of them went double platinum. Now, I'm going to tell you what he was getting on just on those albums, okay? he was getting on $1 million seller, he was getting $1.50. I'm saying that this was usually the going rate, so I assume he had the standard contract. He was getting $1.50 an album. So let's say he's only getting $1, okay? He holds 6 gold albums. All right, that's $1 an album. That's 500,000 albums. So do the math on that. You get a gold album at 500,000 sales. He had double platinum album. Wow, that means 2 million albums. That means considerably over $2 million. That's assuming it was $1 an album, which I suspect it was $1.50 an album. But he died penniless, all from the drugs, all of the alcohol. And George Jones had to bury him. He filed bankruptcy in 1990 after the IRS put that lien on him, and he was just totally penniless. And it's unbelievable that a talented guy that had all that money and just blew it all on drugs, on partying and what have you, to where George Jones stepped forth and said, I'm going to see that he has a proper burial. Talk about a proper burial. I understand, and I didn't go there, but I heard that from friends that saw it. Very few people, very few members of the Grand Ole Opry attended his funeral. But I heard that the only one that really went that was visible, and I don't know how he's visible because he was a little bitty guy. They said little Jimmy Dickens showed up there. The rest were the Hell's Angels. I don't know where they held the funeral, but they say that it was packed, and it was also the roughest looking funeral or memorial ever in the history because, you know, when those Hell's Angels roll up with, I don't know how many were there, they said hundreds and hundreds were there. And so that means you've got hundreds and hundreds of motorcycles. So that's hundreds and hundreds of motorcycles making noise. And the hearse is going to the graveyard where George was having him buried. That was a loud funeral procession, I guarantee you, with the motorcycles and the Hell's Angels. But they got him buried, and I don't have any idea of where he went from there. He, you know, God's your judge. But he left a legacy of problems, prisons, a lot of hit records, and a legacy of just wild times. But that's our story on Johnny Paycheck. It is I run out of words talking about him. He only had number one. Out of all those hits, he only had one record go number one. That was Take This Job and Shove It. There was another thing I got to mention. There was a time when he was trying to get his life straight, and that was around 2000 or so. And I was going to a church called the Large Chapel right there in Brentwood, Tennessee. And he came out there with a lady that I assume set it up for him to be there. And he's on the podium singing, and he's got the words written down to Amazing Grace. Most people that are Christians or have been exposed to it know the words to Amazing Grace. It's not that difficult. But he had to read the words to Amazing Grace. But what really looked out of place to me, it did look out of place. He was standing up there singing Amazing Grace, and on the neck of his guitar, inlaid in mother of pearl, was Shove It. And for some reason, Shove It just looked out of place in a church. But he was there and he did it. I'm going to wrap it up on him right now before, Lord, I'm still in, as I thought about this and putting this show together and thinking about it, and thinking about seeing him, thinking about the stories that R.C. Bannon told me, and R.C. Bannon was telling me they did a live album at the Palomino Club in Burbank, California, and he was on that live album. And he said, while I was singing, and the crowd was out there, and they were all Hell's Angels, and I was afraid that they would just wreck the place or something if I sang bad. So I only sang 2 songs on the album, and I got off. Kilroy, I got the hell out of there and wrapped it up. And talking about wrapping it up, we're going to wrap this up, but not before I thank our sponsor, Total Feeds. I mean, they are incredible people. Dr. Harry Anderson has come up with so many formulas for every species of animals, including people. So go to the website, totalfeed.com. Also, I ask you to do this. As we try to build this podcast, and we're trying to make something out of it, so we'll be able to tell you folks about artists and some things you don't know about some of their favorite artists. May not be your favorite artists, but you'll know about them if you'll follow us on this podcast. So please subscribe. There'll be a place on there to hit like. There'll be a place on there to share. So I ask you, if you feel like it, and I hope you feel like it, to subscribe, like, and share. In the meantime, this is Kilroy. Telling my friend to bring up old paint. We got to saddle up and drift. God bless each and every one of you. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Kilroy's Outlaws and Legends Behind the Music. If you have any thoughts or questions about the content, email them. Kilroy Outlaws and Legends, all one word, at yahoo.com. That's Kilroy, no S, Outlaws and Legends, all one word, at yahoo.com. And don't forget to subscribe. Third-party use of any part of this podcast without the expressed consent of Eddie Kilroy is prohibited. The Kilroy's Outlaws and Legends Behind the Music podcast is a production of Eddie Kilroy.